Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. The traffic, for some reason, on 94 was absolutely miserable this morning, and I expect members are having trouble getting in. I don't know why. There were no accidents. It just, something happened. But on that's, fortunately, we have a happy note after that sad one. And we have with us this morning Future Farmers of America. And I understand they're going to have two folks come up and testify with us, Heidi Slott and Stuart Schumacher. Do you want to come up? Oh, on this side. I see both on both sides now. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Wagenius and members of this committee. We're so glad that we could come here and testify today. My name is Heidi Slott, and I'm currently a sophomore at the University of Minnesota studying agricultural education and natural resources.
And my name is Stuart Schumacher. I'm a freshman at the University of Minnesota, and I'm studying agricultural and food business management. Yes.
Well, welcome. If you all would proceed.
We are with the Minnesota FFA today, and currently all these students are working on learning more about agricultural policy and how it works, and a little bit of how the House and the Senate function in the legislative manner. So really it's more of an informative process for all of us in learning a bit about policy and how things work.
We're really excited because we now have over 10,000 members in the Minnesota FFA Association, and we're all here today to continue learning about agriculture and what we can do to be better citizens of this state and to work with our legislators like you all today to continue to advance with agricultural policy. I also wanted to thank you for your diligence in working on these matters and partnering with FFA and agricultural education to continue to advance this. All of these students are learning about service and leadership, and these members are all especially interested in learning what the Senate and the House is doing in Minnesota and in the United States in general. So some of these students someday might have a role and be back in this room. So it's really neat for them to be able to see this.
So we would like to take the time now to entertain any questions that you may have.
Representative McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wonder if both testifiers could tell us what part of the agriculture their family's business is in.
Yes, thank you. Madam Chair, I grew up in southwest Minnesota in Winthrop, and I grew up on a hog and crop farm, so we raise about 4,000 hogs every year, and then we have corn, soybeans, barley, and alfalfa.
And Madam Chair, I came from a nursery, Schumacher's Nursery, and I've done a little bit of work with you guys before. And I'm also from southwest Minnesota, residing in Heron Lake.
Thank you. And, is anybody else? Yes. Lots of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The issue that I would like to talk briefly about is the issue of ag education and the serious need for more ag educators. Could either of you highlight that for me?
Yes, Madam Chair. It is across the nation we have a shortage of ag teachers, specifically here in Minnesota. Last year we had about 14 positions that were open that we did not have educators to fill. So we're working really hard to get the word out that we need educators. It's really important that we continue to work to create positions and schools to have programs that are able to license ag educators. Currently in Minnesota, the University of Minnesota is the only university with a 4-year program to license ag educators. So we are working to help students to realize that we have a lot of 2+2 programs and to create more positions in schools like in southwest Minnesota, like SMSU in Marshall, South Central College in Mankato, and then the Ridgewater in Hutchinson and Wilmer also have 2+2 programs.
Thank you. Representative Fabian, did you have something?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Heidi and Stuart, thanks for being here. What a great organization. I got to meet a bunch of you last night. That was pretty cool. And both of you are students at the University of Minnesota, and we realize that being on a large campus like that, and in the state of Minnesota, there's a lot of maybe some misperceptions about what agriculture is today. Can you give me some insight as to what you think maybe might be one or two of the misperceptions that are out there that maybe we can work together to change?
Madam Chair, one thing that I have noticed coming to such a large campus is there is a little bit of misunderstanding of how much technology is in agriculture. There is the misconception by a lot of people that farming and agriculture in general is very past time. It's the driving the old tractor with no cab, or plowing 6 rows at a time. And I've found that in different places in meeting new people. And I take it as our job to inform people about this misconception that agriculture is actually very technologically advanced. I was actually able to show somebody a picture of my grandfather's tractor, and he has 3 computer screens up on the side all telling him different things and how he should be doing different things in the field. And for me, I guess that is the largest misconception for myself.
I agree with Stuart. There's a saying that today farmers are not just farmers, they're mechanics, meteorologists, mathematicians, engineers. They have to know a little bit of everything, and it's really important that we let people know just how much farmers have to learn and how much they're doing every day. I also think that it's important for everyone, whether they are from the University of Minnesota and they've grown up in the city their whole life, or they're from a rural area, that agriculture affects all of us every day. It's what we eat, what we're breathing, what we're wearing. So it really is something that we are encountering every single day.
Yes, if you'd like.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Could you quickly tell us a few things that the FFA chapters are doing to get the word out to Metro kids or people that may not know about agriculture about the good things we do?
Sure.
Madam Chair, I would like to highlight one chapter, and that's the Morris Area FFA chapter. And one thing they do is every year they come in with different animals, and they bring farmers as well to a local elementary school in the metro area. Ooh. And they inform students about where their food comes from, what the process is, and in my opinion, one of the coolest things they do is they bring in a cow and then they feed them hamburgers and show them the cheese comes from the cow, the beef comes from the cow, the bun will come from a field of wheat. And it's really interesting to see how when you have these second and third graders, their minds completely open to all these ideas, and they aren't stuck in their ways and don't really have an opinion on a lot of stuff yet. And they just are open to this whole new thing that they've never seen before, and it's a very amazing process.
Morris is actually also looking to expand, and they're partnering with the Dassel-Cokato chapter, and this year they're going to be at the state fairgrounds. They're going to be able to bring in students from more than just one elementary school, so they're going to be able to open that up to just a ton of Metro kids, so that's really exciting for us too. We also just wrapped up FFA Week, National FFA Week, so a lot of our chapters across the state were doing projects with ag literacy and helping to have their local chapters and local communities as well as the state really know what FFA does and what agriculture does and how it impacts them every day.
Representative Hansen, did you have something?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here. My blue jacket doesn't quite fit anymore, but I still have it, and I appreciated your comments about staying involved, and I would ask all of you that are in the room that civic engagement's really critical, and because of the skills you've learned with parliamentary procedure, you'll have the opportunity to run a lot of meetings in your life, and hopefully some of them will be here. So stay involved, get involved in your city councils or school boards as you go through life. I've found that FFA provided the skills. You don't really realize you're learning them, but they're going to stay with you the rest of your life.
Thank you. I didn't hear a question there, Representative.
I also don't have, well, yes, I do have a question and a comment. First of all, for members of the committee, you need to know that I spent the first 8 years of my career in Minnesota on the agriculture campus, and in fact started in a department that was in the College of Agriculture and have published papers in an agricultural journal just to get my credentials in place. Second of all, one of the things I'm working with Representative Karen Clark is the chief author of it, not here yet, but a bill on urban agriculture. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to kind of give another outlet of things to do for the immigrant communities in the Twin Cities. And one of the things that we kind of asked about is anyone looked at doing FFA chapters in the inner city schools. And I mean the real inner city schools, not the kind of ones that are almost suburban, because we think there's a real need to do that. I know Representative Hamilton has been very involved in trying to work out with some of the problems that the immigrant communities have with integrating their customs into our rules and regulations and so forth. So, you know, you got a Hamilton-Con cooperation, you know there's something either very right about it or very wrong about it.
Representative Keel, excuse me.
Okay, yes. Well, the question, I don't know if these people can answer it. If someone here can answer, is there any interest in starting to look at forming FFA chapters in, you know, really inner city schools?
Yes, Madam Chair. We actually have been working harder to get FFA chapters into inner city schools, and we also work closely with Minnesota Extension through the U of M. So we're starting maybe with 4-H chapters or community-supported agriculture, school gardening. I was in a class last spring, actually, that partnered with school gardens in London, and we got to go and really see their gardening system is very advanced, and we got to partner with those schools and then come back and really work with inner city schools to help to establish those programs. So helping them to get those community gardens started and school gardening programs, and then bringing in ag educators and starting to help them to really see the importance of agricultural education, and then working towards creating FFA chapters. We do have some co-ops in the Chaska and Chanhassen. There are co-ops, so students are able to come from their schools to this after-school program and be a part of an FFA chapter as well. So we're working harder to get these chapters into the inner city and metro areas.
Yeah. Just one more comment. I know the Landscape Arboretum has a terrific program with school gardens and community gardens in the metro areas, one in North Minneapolis. And one of the things I really liked about it was that, you know, one of the things you talk about, the problem of community gardens is people who aren't working there come take the stuff. Well, they made sure that the whole outside boundary was planted with tomato plants, and the encouragement of people coming by to pick them on their way as they went by, you know, again, to deal with the food deficit in that area. So it was just a total different attitude towards the protection of people rather than protection of crops.
Yeah, another really cool thing I saw in London was that they had the community gardens set up specifically for immigrants, and they would have a different part for each culture, so maybe one for an Asian culture or a Hispanic culture, and they would grow crops specific to their areas. And then at the end of the summer, they would harvest them and have kind of a cookout. So everybody got to share in each other's cultures and talk about that a little bit. So that was a really cool thing to do.
Just one last comment. That's also what the Landscape Arboretum did. They had this great cookout, and they also, one of the things they also did, I don't know, they were actually connecting not just community gardens growing food for themselves, but they connected a commercial establishment so that the community garden supplied all the basil for one, I don't remember which restaurant it was, but they had the contract to do that. So it was, and got paid for it. So it was kind of showing the commercial aspects of agriculture too, not just home feeding. So.
Representative Keel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to say I very much enjoyed last night. You are all so well-spoken and just very pleasant, and just makes me really excited for the future of our state, not just agriculture. But I also wanted to know, in FFA, do you work with environmental studies, trying to educate students and community about, the growth of our crops and how we deal with the environment?
Madam Chair, we have career development events within the FFA, so students are able to learn skills in the classroom and then directly apply them at regional and state competitions. And we have about 27 different CDEs, we call them, and some of them are directly tied to the environment. So we have natural resources, wildlife management, and we also have some that are general lifelong career skills. So we're learning job interview, public speaking, extemporaneous speaking, and these are all ways that we are able to apply our skills to these different areas. I think that another misconception, going back to Representative Fabian, is that maybe conservation isn't directly a part of agriculture, and they are very closely tied. So we work very closely in both aspects to make sure that we are balancing conservation and sustainable agriculture and making sure that our students recognize what that means.
We also do, Madam Chair, we also do things called supervised agricultural experiences, or SAEs, and this allows students to start a career or start a job in environmental studies and work hand in hand with it and see how things are working and comparing in both fields. And this really opens the door for the connection between agriculture and natural resources.
I would just like to highlight actually some chapters up in northern Minnesota especially. We had the opportunity to visit some of the chapters in our Region 2, which is up by Bemidji, Brainerd, Duluth area. And one of the coolest things that I saw was in Grand Rapids. There's not as much cropland, so they focus very much on natural resources and forestry. And their chapter actually, to raise money for projects that they want to do throughout the school year, have a chapter forest. And they're having their junior students go out and do all of the sawing and milling and then selling those pine trees to a local paper mill in order to raise money. So that was just something really cool that I saw, and they're focusing very strongly on their career tech ed programs.
Thank you. Representative Hamilton will have the last question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Kahn, thank you. We actually, last week, I went into Highland Park High School to visit about opportunities in agriculture and working very closely. I serve on a board with the St. Paul School Districts, and I've had conversations with Representative Mariani as well. His daughter's at Humboldt High School. And so we were talking about, they actually have an agriculture class there also. And we sponsored a bus to bring students from St. Paul out to Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, and visit a farm here this last summer. Went very, very well. And a few of the other things you talked about, working with different minority groups. A dear friend of mine who owns Mungtown Marketplace here down on Como, he's actually enrolling in the MARL program, getting him involved in the Minnesota Agriculture Rural Leadership Program. And so reaching out to friends like that to get involved. So I'd like to work more on with you on different things, different opportunities and programs to get people involved and engaged, because we definitely need more and more people involved in agriculture. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're glad to have you all here this morning. And I was particularly glad to hear that you're having agriculture and natural resources together. We're talking about sustainability. And one of the issues that we've been talking about this year are pollinators and what's happening to them. I won't ask you that question, but next year, when because this is a tradition, so next year, when you won't be here, but somebody just like you will be here, we're going to ask about pollinators. So just be forewarned, and looking forward to hearing that next year. Thanks so much again for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next, and you might want to hear the next thing that's coming if you have time, because we are continuing with our work on groundwater. And with that, Jason Meckel from the Division of Ecological and Water Resources is with us. If members remember that we asked DNR to come back with some specific proposals. They have done that. It was a short report, but I thought it well done. And so we want to hear from you, and I understand there's somebody from the public that would like to testify in this segment. And I have to tell you, folks, we're also going to leave at 1:15. Obviously, we're going to have to come back tonight. I had hoped not, but we are. Well, if we have lots to do in a day, that's what happens. So, with that, Mr. Meckel, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Jason Meckel, Department of Natural Resources, Division of Ecological and Water Resources. Madam Chair, as you mentioned, last year during the session, we were required to bring back some recommendations for tools to fully implement the groundwater sustainability requirements in statute, sections 103G.287, subdivisions 3 and 5. We conducted a review of the statutory authority and responsibilities that we have at the DNR, and the report that we prepared describes several changes in 4 different categories that I'll talk about to refine and strengthen the state's groundwater management policies. Our review did find that we have very strong statutes and rules to protect and manage our groundwater resources. So as you had mentioned, Madam Chair, it's fairly short, so there were a few tweaks. But we also, in the report, highlighted that as we implement groundwater management areas and deal with the issues and concerns about overuse and contamination, that we might also find other changes down the road, and that we would make a habit of revisiting these statutes and rules in the future as needed. DNR's role with regard to groundwater is, one, our permit program. We administer the use appropriation permits of more than 10,000 gallons in a day or 1 million gallons a year. We collect information and we analyze information. We have law enforcement responsibilities and education and technical assistance. The 4 areas that we've identified where we could improve are, one is improve the information on water use. Our recommendation is to require that we have tamper-proof flow meters on all permitted water users so that we can get accurate information. I'm going to just highlight a few of the items in the report, the bullets that supported this recommendation. One of those is that we estimate about 50%, 49% report their water use based on a time and pumping rate estimation. So the pump is rated for 800 gallons per minute, and I've run it for this many hours, and so there's my estimated use. But what we find when we look at the reports that people have submitted to us on their water use is that some individuals report the exact same water use every single year, or they report the exact same amount of water used every month. These time estimates are not verifiable. We have no way of confirming that this is an accurate number or not. Flow meters do provide an ability to verify that this is the amount of water that's being used. And I would just highlight that we know that flow meters are a requirement in many of the states to the south and west of us that use groundwater and other water resources for agricultural irrigation. In that category of improving the use, the information on the water use, we also recommended some penalties for non-compliant reporting. We find that every year, even though water use reports are due on February 15th and have been for a very long time, anywhere from 400 to 800 permittees do not submit their reports to us in a timely fashion. And it's not until we've sent them multiple letters reminding them that we get the information. Late reports slow down our ability to conduct an analysis, slows down our ability to conduct permit reviews, and pushes timelines well into the next growing season. We had a couple of recommendations with regard to improving compliance with groundwater appropriation regulations. The first of these was a recommendation for the DNR to get administrative penalty orders. Administrative penalty order has been adopted by the Department of Health, Department of PCA, and it's used to enforce laws protecting our natural resources and public health. What we find with our current authorities is that the penalties, and we talked about this last session for noncompliance, is that the appropriation permits violations are a misdemeanor. The misdemeanors are prosecuted by county attorneys with fines that range from $50 to $1,000. They're very time-consuming, thorough investigations that often result in minimal fines and have not proven effective in achieving compliance. The report has said that we anticipate presenting a bill to the legislature. That language has been presented, and I believe it is in House File 2616, authored by Representative Fisher, Uglum, Isaacson, and Ward. We also made a recommendation to increase the after-the-fact permit penalties for individuals who appropriate water without a permit. We've last year been focusing on identifying noncompliance, and we found in some parts of the state we've had as low as 2% noncompliance, but in other areas we found as high as 20% of agricultural irrigation systems that were operating without a permit. It takes a considerable amount of time identifying and verifying these noncompliances. It certainly exceeds the fee of $140 for the application, and we believe that these costs of noncompliance are being subsidized by other water users that are following regulations and paying their fees. So we recommended a penalty there to provide a financial incentive to comply. We also recommended that we amend statutory authority to investigate water appropriation activities affecting waters of the state conducted with or without a permit. Fairly minor technical recommendation here, but essentially what we've added is that have a permit. Even in cases that we have permits, they may not be following specific conditions of the permit, and current statute just says we can investigate those without a permit. The third category of recommendations that we have are to promote wise use of groundwater and water conservation practices. As we've talked about over the last year, our increasing use of groundwater may be resulting in overuse and unsustainable, and we may need to be finding suitable alternatives that offset those needs. One specific recommendation here is to provide the DNR the authority to waive fees for stormwater management systems that meet certain criteria. Stormwater is water that runs off of an impervious surface such as a parking lot, a rooftop, or a road. Current law does not differentiate waters of the state, and stormwater is considered a water of the state. But in our discussions with municipalities and other local units of government that are working in stormwater management arenas, they've suggested that it makes sense to eliminate this fee or significantly reduce it, and they're utilizing stormwater offset groundwater use. Some examples that I could speak to: the city of Woodbury has constructed a project. They're routing stormwater into a holding pond as part of a golf course, and they use that water to irrigate the golf course, therefore directly offsetting the amount of groundwater that would have been used otherwise. Other municipalities are implementing similar kinds of projects. We did put some provision in here in our recommendation that we not waive it just outright, but that we waive it if it meets certain criteria, and I just want to specifically highlight that it's offsetting a groundwater use and not having an adverse impact on what otherwise been in receiving water. As we've discussed that issue with watershed districts, they've raised the concern to us that we might go too far and have unintended consequences, so we think it makes sense to have some review criteria for that provision. We also had a recommendation dealing with open-loop geothermal groundwater systems, and we stopped short of a specific recommendation because there's quite a bit of unknowns with these. I'll just remind folks that back in 1989, the legislature prohibited issuing permits for new systems that exceed 5 million gallons per year, and all large-scale systems were required to be phased out by 2010. Open loop is a system in which the water is brought up, it's used to either cool or heat, and then it's discharged. Closed loop means that it goes back down into the groundwater system. We don't know how many open loop systems there are, but we're seeing more and more of them. We think that it's a waste of water to use it for just one use. On the other hand, we don't know, like I said, how many there are that are out there, and we don't know, who this would all affect with industry, and so we stopped short of a specific recommendation there. Another recommendation was for the executive branch agencies to evaluate statutes, rules, and support reuse and aquifer recharge. I'll just highlight that what is known as artificial aquifer recharge through direct injection is a practice that's used throughout many other parts of the country. It's specifically prohibited in Minnesota rule, but it might make sense that in some parts of the state we reconsider that and utilize that as a way to maintain our aquifers. We think at a minimum that it makes sense for us to revisit that, and we've suggested that the Environmental Quality Board would make a good organization to help carry that effort forward across the executive branch agencies. And finally, the last recommendation that we had was to, it involved improving our management of appropriation permits. And as 2010 statutes required the DNR to consider water quality when we issue appropriation permits, as we're working to do that, one of the things that we're finding is that there are some different statutes that are addressed in 103H that deal with groundwater protection, and there's a definition of non-degradation that means changing groundwater from its natural condition by human activities. The statutes in 103G 287 direct the Commissioner of Natural Resources to issue permits only if the Commissioner determines that the groundwater use is sustainable to supply the needs of future generations, and the proposed use will not harm ecosystems, degrade water, or reduce water levels beyond the reach of public water supply and domestic wells. There's no definition of degrade, and as we're wrestling with the issue of nitrates in particular, trying to figure out how do we apply this to appropriation permits has been an active discussion, and we're working with the Department of Ag and the other agencies, but it's just an area that we feel might need some further definition. That concludes my testimony on the recommendations.
Thank you. Good report. Just answering the questions. I just will note for the record that the waiving of the fee for stormwater ponds and with criteria has there's a lot of interest in that. So I'm glad you brought that up. On the tamper-proof flow meters, would you bring us a list of the other states that are states like ours that make those requirements? We are kind of an outlier, I think, so it would be helpful to know what other states are doing. Representative Kahn.
I was a little confused by your comment that you didn't do anything about open loop geothermal groundwater systems? Because I read in your summary, at least, promote the issuance of appropriation permits for new open-loop geothermal groundwater systems. Isn't that kind of a recommendation dealing with that? In the
Madam Chair, Representative Khan, yes, and thank you for the opportunity to clarify. We think it does make sense to prohibit it, but we stopped short of identifying a threshold of size, a timeline, a phasing out, because we just weren't able to
Sure.
do the research that we think would be necessary to help inform that discussion before the report was due. That's what I meant by
Okay, sure. But anyway, I just want to commend you for, I think this is a great step forward that we ought to look at for some other things we're considering in the legislature, which is stopping the expansion of it by prohibiting the issuance for the new ones before you go on after the old ones. So thank you very much for that recommendation.
Representative McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess first, Madam Chair, I'm wondering, my question is, are we going to bring back this issue tonight? I've got a number of questions, and I don't want to take up the whole time, but I
Well,
don't
we certainly
think...
could. I don't, that wasn't my intention, but we could do that. We are going to, for sure, pass out the Heritage Bill tonight, and it just depends on how long people would like to sit. I have great patience. We can sit for a long time. I do know that there's somebody from your district who, or from Dakota County, I don't know your district, who would like to testify. I want to get their testimony in this morning so they don't have to come back. There are also people who would like to testify on LOHC. I would like them to testify this morning so they don't have to come back. It's just a matter of if people are coming from far away, let's let them testify. So that would be my intention before we recess to go to the floor.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I guess I just have a number of things that maybe I could make the request of Mr. Meckel that I think maybe they can bring back this evening, and maybe I could just mention them if I could, because
If you'd mention them.
I don't see how we possibly are going to get through this. Mr. Meckel, you mentioned a number of things about the flow meters and the need for that, and I strongly disagree with where you're coming from on the need for those. We have a number of ways of measuring the amount of water today, and the reality a rain gauge works real well, and you have all different kinds of ways of monitoring it, and we report it by what we use. It seems like you're hung up in the volume of the water a little bit, when the reality is, where are the records that you've gotten for the last 40 years? When you got the clean water money to update your MPARS system, did you enter all the data for all the information that's been sent into the DNR? And I guess, Madam Chair, I'm probably asking you this, Mr. Meckel, if you could come back this evening with that, because you're totally concentrating on getting a few producers to give you some more information, when the reality is the agency's been totally deficient in using the information you already have and getting information from producers so you could make a good decision on what we're doing. And Madam Chair, I'd also ask Mr. Meckel to come back with the proof that what we're doing is not sustainable. I noticed in the audience today is a producer who brought information to me about a well on the outskirts of Hastings that's been monitored since the 70s. Last year when he gave me the information, it had a foot more water in the well than it did when they began to monitor it in the 70s. I'm curious to know where that kind of information is, along with the producer in South Washington County that's in the sand country up there, that when I said to him, based on your testimony, Mr. Meckel, that you can't monitor wells from that are being produced in our pivots, he said, Denny, what are you talking about? They drop a string down in it twice a year and measure the water. And I thought, oh, so we could be doing that. You already were, the county or whoever, the SWCD is doing it, sending you in the information, and you have it. And then I said that to the other producer. I said, well, I guess they can drop a string down in the hole and check it twice a year. He said, what are you talking about, Denny? They can download it right off the pivot and get the information 365, 24/7. This was after you came to us and told us you can't monitor it. So I think, Madam Chair, I've got it all highlighted through here, Mr. Meckel, of questions. You're hung up on getting the information and getting more accurate flow meters, which are problematic in their use, you know, and you're doing things like telling people to quit pump. You don't want to give them a permit to pump out of the ground when they would discontinue an operation of pumping out of an existing surface water trout stream. Madam Chair, the agency is all messed up here in where they're going. And your priorities, where when you sent out this MPARS, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, did you tell us about the importance and tell the producers that we've got a really serious thing going on here. We're trying to figure out if what we're doing is sustainable, and you need to realize that the past practices of just assuming that you get the permit may not be true. You're not doing any education with us to talk to us. It's embarrassing. For 6 years, I've asked you to electronically put this on. You finally get it here, and then you don't even have all the information you could. Madam Chair, if I don't know where, I could go on and on and on about what is going on here and some of this language in this report. This is unbelievable. And so if the flexibility is tonight, I know you've got a real short time frame here and it got compressed even further. But I want to ask a lot of good questions here because things like ending open loop, that's embarrassing that we still are doing that. Representative Khan, they should be ended. Taking water out of storm ponds, we've been advocating that for years. This is embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing what you've got going on in the field and the way we are treating the producers in my county. And they're not my constituents. Actually, none of them live in my district. It's embarrassing what we're doing when we've got such a great resource. That trout stream is so much better today than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, and you're not even concentrating on what you should be on. Madam Chair, and I want to ask these questions. I just wanted to lay it out because this is really, really sad where we prioritized here and what you got going on. Flow meters, that's what you're worried about? You haven't even reached out to the people to let them know how important it is that they be filling out these forms accurately. And now you're worried about flow meters. Maybe you could sit down at the kitchen table with them and chat with them and talk about the importance. They don't even know what a designated trophy trout stream is. The only one in a major metropolitan area that's so much better today than it was 30 years ago. And you're worried about the flow meters on a couple of producers when they're sucking water out of the river at 500 gallons a minute. My goodness gracious.
As you bring your report back for this evening, you may want to talk about the lack of your ability to do much work since Representative McNamara, when he was in control, cut your budget dramatically and cut staff. And what we had to do this last year was fill in that hole, which we did, but that has put you behind the 8 ball. And I would agree that DNR has had trouble enforcing water and giving water laws and bringing information out to citizens because their budget was so dramatically cut. So let's be honest with citizens about what's going on here. So with that, I think we're going to, can you come back tonight?
Certainly.
I think what we will do is do the LOHC thing tonight first, and then we will go to Mr. Meckel. Thank you so much. So we'll try to give you some time frame there. We have a John Consemius who is asked to testify, and I would like to get folks who've come from other places to testify now. And as you testify, we have a limited amount of time here, We are going to leave, and how many people need to testify? 4 from out state. So we have 5 people, and we have 12 minutes. So do the math.
Thank you very much. I'm John Consamius. I live in Dakota County in Douglas Township. I'm the 4th generation farmer on our family farm. I started irrigating back in 1967 when there was hardly any irrigation in Dakota County. Today we have 6 wells that we irrigate. 4 of my children are farming. I'm retired now. They couldn't be here because they're home working, and I'm over the hill, so I'm trying to help them out a little bit. But I tried to get 3 handouts. There's one about a report that when we first irrigated, we were really concerned about drying up other people's wells, and so I contacted DNR, and the report that was handed out, I hope you have a copy of this, that it shows
It's coming around. Yes, we will have it. Go ahead.
The wells that we have, which the DNR records the water level below ground every hour on the hour since 2011. But they started back in 1973, and they recorded all the water level, and right today it'll show you that the water is closer. We have more water than we did then. And I'm not a speaker. This is not my expertise, but I enjoy farming, and we have land that we couldn't farm if we couldn't irrigate it because it's sandy ground. But with irrigation, there's a sheet that shows you what we can produce. We can double crop. You can't double crop any place in Minnesota, but we can do that in Dakota County. And I showed some of the results that if we can't irrigate, we can raise corn on 140 acres. The reason why I figure 140 acres, most center pivots on 160, and we can't irrigate the corn because it runs in a circle. But of the 140 acres, if we just raise corn, we can add about $68,000 to our economy. But if we could irrigate, and then we can double crop. We can plant peas, we can plant green beans, we can plant sweet corn on it. We can produce over $2 million worth. That's jobs and income for all of what the consumer pays for in the grocery store. So do we want 68,000 or do we want 2 million? And so it's very important. Look, we had corn go to $8 last year because we have a shortage. We have more people. We have more mouths to feed, so we have to start producing all the corn we can. And the other thing I just want to tell you about, there's a chart that I showed you about how we monitor our water. How much water do we use? We don't want to use a gallon more than we need because it's expensive to do it. Irrigation systems are expensive. Electricity is expensive. And what we do is we work with John Deere on this. We have it on our farm. We have a probe that goes down and it measures the moisture in the water. When that gets low, it's on a computer. It tells my son that on his iPad that it's water, the ground is drying out. We should turn the irrigator on. And so we turn it on, and you can show then how it comes up. And it all depends on the weather. If we get a rain, we don't irrigate. But for some years, we didn't even turn on our irrigators. That's very rare. And in some years, we put on about 6 to 7 inches, the most we've ever put on. So I'm not through, but I just want to introduce Dan Fowler. He sells irrigator, and Dan has helped me a lot in trying to make our irrigator system. Irrigators they're hard to keep running because, believe me, it's a lot of medical. So
could I just make one comment about Mr. Meckel's comments earlier?
Yes.
About this 20% of people that are appropriating water out there without permits today. And I've been doing this for 40 years in the industry. And one of the biggest problems I've seen over the last 40 years is the permit process that DNR has in place for getting that permit was a bad system. So they changed their system this July to how a person goes about getting a new appropriation permits. And I was excited about that change because I felt it was needed. But there's one major flaw in the new system that's worse than the old system, is we have a permit process. We have to get a DNR approval for it to drill a well. But to make that farmer go through all the expense of drilling a well today, and there's no guarantees from the DNR that he can use it when he gets done, is ridiculous. I've been doing this for 40 years. What the DNR should do is, I like the idea of getting that approval up front, but don't make the farmer spend $20,000 to $30,000 to drill the well just to find out later if he can use it or not. If we go and do just a test well for this farmer for $3,500, send that information to the DNR, we're going to tell them the maximum amount of water we need from that well to water that particular crop. And why make the farmer spend $20,000 to $30,000 when we could do that for $3,500?
I think we'll have that answer tonight. I appreciate your coming. We have 4 other people that wanted to testify.
If there's one other thing I could add.
They're all coming together.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Is there one other thing I could add? I know I worked...
You understand you are taking time from other people who have come from Painesville. You can do it, but just remember what you are doing here.
Just one sentence is that I have my tax statements. We could talk about flow meters. I have 150 acres. The taxes were $2,600 in 2007. This year they're $8,500. They're $55 an acre. We were paying $18 an acre. Now we're paying $55 an acre.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have folks from First Burr is coming down, and Biz Clark, Kevin Furman. We welcome you. I know we don't have a lot of time, but we would like you to come down and just speak to us for a moment. I said that. Oh, she's not coming down.
Madam Chair, I'll refer to somebody that's closer, and I'll definitely wait till tonight.
We would appreciate that. Thank you. If you all could quickly testify, we would very much appreciate it.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Biz Clark. I'm past president of Minnesota Coalition of Lake Associations. I'm a member of the board, and currently I'm chairman of the Cook County Coalition of Lake Associations. I'm here to express my concern about the process by which the Minnesota COLA AIS proposal to the Lessard-Sams Council was initially viewed favorably by the council, and then, for want of a better word, morphed into a project to be managed by the Initiative Foundation. Those funds would be granted to the DNR and then granted to the Initiative Foundation as per the legislation. How did this happen? What's wrong with this picture? Well, I think several things. As with all grant programs, there are costs associated with administering them. In this case, we have 2 entities, the DNR and the Initiative Foundation, administering a program before the funds are ever granted to our local governmental units, lake associations, or whoever qualifies under the criteria is yet unknown. We're doubling administrative costs here, and that seems difficult to defend given the few dollars that the AIS programs receive. This proposal funds pilot projects to assess the effectiveness of various strategies to prevent the spread of AIS. There are a number of programs already implemented in other states with reasonable amount of effectiveness. These programs were the basis for the original Minnesota COLA proposal. We should be drawing on that experience rather than inventing new programs and strategies. We need grant funds to monitor incoming watercraft and transport of boats from infected lakes to non-infected lakes. Speaking on behalf of Minnesota COLA, we do support the action of the council that granted the funds for combating AIS in Minnesota. But our concern is that the funds are for activities several steps removed from the strategies that have found to be effective elsewhere, which is to clean all boats entering and leaving the waters of the state. To achieve this, the DNR needs to deploy decontamination units in high-traffic areas around the state and staff those units with a trained force to examine and decontaminate as many watercraft as possible. This is the only effective way of keeping AIS out of our lakes. We look forward to working with the council to ensure effective use of funds. We ask for assurance that the process by which proposals are reviewed and funds granted be more transparent and follow the process in the future. The credibility of the process needs to be restored. As the executive director of the council urged recently in a newspaper article, I am standing up, and I wish to be counted as I do care how the dollars are spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farnham?
Hi, Madam Chair and members of the council. My name is Kevin Farnham. I'm on the Cronus Lake Association Board of Directors. I represent Stearns Coalition of Lake Associations, and I'm on the executive committee for the Minnesota Coalition of Lake Associations, and speaking for myself. The key points that I'd like to make you aware of is somewhat similar to what Biz said, is that the process that got to the point of the Lessard-Sams recommendation has, in the development of that process, it has some flaws along with it. The project was not necessarily a collaborative project, and some of the results, different than what we already know, are going to be undeliverable, is my concern. The outcome missed the spirit of the urgency that is needed. What I would say is the race to protect the lakes and the rivers of the state of Minnesota is a sprint. It's not a marathon event, and we need to think of it as a sprint. The process fails to look at beyond normal solutions. Anytime you do a pilot project, pilot projects allow you to do things that are out of the box, extraordinary. And I think that's the way, if we go forward, and if you go forward, I think thinking out of the box on these pilot projects may in fact be great benefit to the state of Minnesota. It's a little bit about the old definition that Einstein gave about what is insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to get different results. And so we have an opportunity to do that. Another concern that I have is that if in fact the project goes through, which having money go towards AIS is absolutely fantastic. It is the right thing to do, and I would support that. But what my concern is that any time money goes, potentially this could kill additional money going forward. I get my funds for my lake association, and as many of us do, by going out to townships, going out to the city, going out to counties to get money.
Yes.
It's so easy for them to simply say, gee, there's this pilot project out there, and we have to wait 5 years to get funding. And we have so limited tools that we do have right now to protect our lakes. We want to be sure, and maybe this committee can recommend additional money so that we don't kill what little tools we have today. Thank you very much. My time is up.
Thank you. Appreciate both of you coming up and being concise. Members, we are going to recess, and we will be back here at 6 p.m., and we will start by doing an House File 1926, which is Representative Hanson's bill on the outdoor heritage funding. And thank you to our page for helping us out today. We do have a new page, and we appreciate him being here. With that, members, we are in recess.